For more information regarding the local impact of the Bay Area wildfires here in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/2020fires.
Morning, my name is Mark Brunton. I'm Operations Section Chief for CAL Fire Incident Management Team 3 on the CZU Lightning Complex. So we're making a lot of great progress on the fire. We're getting ever closer to getting this thing buttoned up, but there still is quite a bit of work in certain parts of our fire that we're working diligently on, and taking our resources, moving them into those areas so that we can get this buttoned up as soon as we possibly can. In the north part of the fire, in the north zone, the Battalion Park area, still a lot of work. We do have our lines established. We have a lot of folks working in there, but still a lot of heavy fuels, a lot of smokes in that heavy duff and the heavy timber in there. And they're continually working, got mopping it up. It's just going to be a long process that we're going to be involved with for the coming days in that area. But all around it in the north zone is really buttoning up really well. The Highway 1 area is looking really good. We're continuing to mop up smokes very deep into the interior, but some of those are very visible to the Highway 1 area, and Highway 1 is been open for a couple days. With the holiday weekend, we're seeing a tremendous amount of traffic out there, and so we do ask that people that are traveling in that area, please be careful, please be heads up. And I know people are stopping and taking videos or pictures of the helicopters working or any of the crews working, but it does pose a safety concern, not only to our personnel, but also to the other people driving on Highway 1 and going out to recreate this weekend. So we do ask for your care and diligence on that. Davenport area is looking really good. We have our fire suppression repair that I've spoken of. They're going in and repairing any of the damage that's been done to the environment through the dozer lines or hand lines, and going back and putting those back to as normal as possible. So there's a lot of work being done in basically the Division Alpha Charlie area, so the White House area, the Gazas truck trail. They're going in there and doing a lot of repair, and they'll continue to do that as we're getting done with the suppression element. They're right on our heels taking care of that. Also, they're working heavily in the Davenport area, working all around that community and further up into the hills of that. And they'll be moving from that systematically around the fire into the valley as they complete their tasks. So a lot of work being done by those folks, and they're having a lot of really good success. On the Highway 9 corridor, even though you see the red, it's really buttoned up fast. We have our control lines in, mopping up heavily, a lot of crews there, a good presence. What we are seeing is, just like I've been saying, as the weather's getting hotter and drier, we'll talk about the weather here shortly, we're seeing the smokes pop up in that duff that's been creeping along in that heavy fuels, and some of the trees still burned out and falling. Not only a safety concern there, but also the fact that we are going back and mopping up and picking up those smokes as they're popping up. But we're going to see a continuous amount of that throughout the rest of this weekend. And yesterday we saw it definitely in some of the islands, what we call areas that were unburned, that we've extinguished all around. Some of those have gotten some heat in them, and they're torching off, so we're watching that very closely. And that's a lot in the Bonnie Doon area, because the way that the fire burned, it's spotted around. So some areas we have a lot of these what are called islands, unburned fuels in the middle of that black. So we're monitoring those closely because we don't want those get going and cause any further damage. Again, we've done a lot of repopulation. There's still repopulation to be done. I would anticipate in the next today, as well as the coming days, we're going to see more repopulation. Can't really get into the details now, but we meet every day with our law enforcement partners, and then also with the County Emergency Operations Center folks, and that is the building departments, the environmental health departments. All these elements have to go, and the utility companies all have to do their part and approve the plan before we just simply move people back in, because we want them to go back into a very safe area and an area that's very functional for them to get back to their normal lives. So it is a process. Sometimes, people are a little antsy because they've been out for a while, understand that, but we don't want to put them back into a place that's hazardous, not only due to the fire, but also maybe the fact that they may not have potable water or other hazards for them utility-wise. So before we repopulate, we take all that in consideration, but we are being very active with that, and you'll see more repopulation probably today and in the coming days. So we'll get people back in, and with that, a lot of eyes out there. They'll be seeing these smokes pop up. Please call them in, and we'll take care of that. It's going to be something we're going to see for the oncoming going days. And also, like I've been saying time and again, is when you are out and about in your property or neighbor's property, be mindful. The trees of fire weekend, and the ash pits and all those different hazards that are created by the fire. Just be cognizant of that and aware of that. So that's also flying. The weather has changed. We'll go more into the weather here shortly, but because of that, the good thing is we're able to fly our aircraft longer, and so we anticipate today, it's clear skies out here today. We're going to be flying them as soon as they can get up. We'll be timing out our aircraft, meaning we'll fly them to the maximum that we can fly them. We'll be dropping a lot of water in support of our current operations in any of the hot spots that are deep interior. We have a lot of those we've identified, and they're going to be working diligently on that. We're down to now 5 water dropping helicopters. We had to ship off one of them to the other fires that are occurring in the state. So we're kind of sharing resources that way, but we still have some assigned, and we'll continue to work on the fire. Now moving into some of the weather concerns. So we have an incident meteorologist assigned to the fire. They put together a really nice graphic for us, so it's really easy for us to look at and glance at, and tells us a lot about the weather, the conditions that we take into consideration when we're doing and planning any of our operations. It's all based on the weather and wildland firefighting. So they put these factors together. They make a really easy chart that gives us some key components that tell us if it's a moderate and elevated or extreme burning conditions. So as you can see, moving from today into Saturday, into Sunday, and Monday, we're into an excessive heat warning. And not only the heat being an issue for us with fire behavior, but also the toll it takes on our firefighters. They're out there working hard, wearing all that gear in these kind of environments. And so with all these conditions, it creates a situation where they need to make sure they hydrate. Again, their physical fitness that they've been improving over time is definitely key to them being successful and being able to work hard to complete our mission out there. We'll see that we're going to change in our wind, go into a north-northwest direction. So that's key. And then something called a Hayden's index, which doesn't mean a lot to most population, but for us firefighters, that means that in these, especially heavy fuels, it's a situation that really we have to be aware of, because it means rapid fire spread if fire gets established in these heavy fuels. So again, you're seeing some really high temperatures, low relative humidities, some wind, and wind from a direction that creates a dry condition. We're very concerned. The National Weather Service has put out an excessive heat warning, so it gives you a lot of impacts regarding the weather and the temperature. You're seeing some temperatures on the coast and the Bay Area that are very unprecedented, extremely abnormal. And so you can appreciate that based on what you're typically used to seeing. And then interior locations. So as we move further into the inland valleys, you're seeing some pretty extensive heat, and with that, the dry conditions. So not only that we're experiencing here on the coast, but throughout the rest of the North State, we have extremely high potential for future fire starts in other parts of the state. And then also the current fires that are burning, some of the national forests are starting to burn onto more state lands because of these conditions. So although we're looking really good here in other parts of the state, we are seeing some conditions that are conducive and fire spreading rapidly in other areas of the state. So with that, as our crews are being released here, we're trying to rest them when we can here, because they're going to be moving on to other fires. We're still early in the fire season. Right here on the coast area, this is a time that is the critical fire area time, and we want to be cognizant that when you're out there recreating, especially this weekend, and you're out there just doing normal stuff around the house, that you're very careful with fire, because we're in a time when fires can start and spread very rapidly.
One woman is asking if you could speak about the area around Smith Grade.
So Smith Grade, that's in the Bonnie Doon area, and that's an area that was heavily impacted, or nearby heavily impacted by fire. And although some properties, people say, well, I don't think my property's been impacted, or I've heard from people that are still there that it's not been impacted. The fact of the matter is the surrounding area has been, and also the fact that the utility companies are extremely busy in there, and also create a potential hazard as well because of the work they're doing. They're actively the past few days, and will continue to be flying in telephone poles and power poles so that they can plant those and string the line. So again, there's some hazards involved with that. And also the fact that some of the area fire did burn through, so we're making sure there's no hazard trees in there and ash pits and so forth. But I would say that based on our plans, without going into too much detail, is the fact that we are looking very closely at repopulation, and that should be coming within a day or just a couple days from now. And so be patient, but we are looking at that very seriously for repopulation.
Kitty on Facebook says, can I drive on 236 near Kings Highway to check for a missing cat?
236 is a partial opening, and so as far as up to Kings Highway, I don't believe at this point in time we're quite open that far. But as soon as we can, there is going to be a point where, because of the devastation of the park, further up close to the park, they are going to be putting gates on either end because of the devastation of the park and not wanting people in there. It's very hazardous. But as far as the residential areas, we have repopulated some of that, and we will continue to repopulate. So once that is, that's probably going to be a good opportunity to be able to look and retrieve your pets. Also check with the local Humane Society because sometimes pets that have run away, they've been located, found. Some of our fire crews have done that, and then they've gotten them to this Humane Society folks, and they're caring for your pets now.
Dave on Twitter wants to know who makes the call on opening Highway 1, and is there an expected opening date?
Well, Highway 1 is open, so I'm sure this question came just before that. Like I said, we have a very extensive process regarding opening of the roadways, whether it be state highways or the local roadways, and repopulation. And so there's a group that meets. We meet as our group around 10:30 every day, and also late in the evening around 6:30. It's the same group, and it consists of us from the fire elements of it, law enforcement, because ultimately it's the county sheriff that makes the final call on repopulation or evacuations that occur. So obviously a big say there by law, and also all the different elements from the county that are responsible for making sure that a place is safe to repopulate. So we meet as a group, we go through a systematic approach, and make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, so that it is safe and effective for folks to move in. We don't take that decision lightly. We look at all the elements and bring all the input in, make sure that it has the utilities in place, and that's how we make the decision. So in the case of Highway 1, some of the big players obviously was Caltrans, making sure the roadway was safe to travel on, the utility companies that they had their work done or could do their work safely by closing a lane or working off the highway, and then obviously from the fire suppression element of it, that it was safe to do so from a fire safety standpoint. Once those entities were all in agreement, then we were good with it, and we did reopen Highway 1.
Cindy on Facebook says, with the heat we're going to have this week, is it possible that we are going to be evacuated again?
As far as from this fire, it's highly unlikely that we'll have an evacuation. We have really good control lines in place. We have the resources in place. So as far as something from this fire, it's extremely, extremely unlikely. That's part of the other repopulation. We're concerned about repopulation because we don't want to repopulate somebody and have to evacuate again. In the past, that's lessons learned. We've had to do that because maybe we've been just too little free flowing with repopulation, and then things change, the fire intensifies, and we've had to evacuate. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. So sometimes you're out a little bit longer, but that's the reason why. Now from another fire start, there's always the potential with these fires. We've seen how aggressively this fire burned. It wasn't an anomaly. We're in very dry conditions. We have a setup with the weather that will potentially create another scenario like that. So we want to be vigilant. So any other fire start that we deem that we need to evacuate people for their safety, we will do so. So we always say be prepared. We're in the wildland fire season. I don't care where you live in the state of California, you're going to be affected by it. So we always have our Ready, Set, Go program with CAL FIRE. Look online to the CAL FIRE website. Very good resource for Ready, Set, Go. And you always want to be in that set phase where you have your go bag ready to go with all the necessities, including medications, all the things that you need to be able to live away from your home for a few days. But look at that, review that resource. It's excellent resource, and we want people to be at that level because in California, this is just, it's becoming a more normal thing, and we want people to be ready so that when they do have to leave, that they can do so under the best conditions possible.
Rebecca on Facebook says, would it be recommended to hose down roofs and keep defensible areas moist?
A lot of people will do that. You'll see on the news and people wetting down roofs and so forth. And in general, without going into a lot of detail ad nauseum, it's not really a good idea. People will stick around longer, we find, trying to do so, thinking they're doing the right things. In reality, it's doing nothing. With the weather conditions we're seeing, that little bit of moisture that you're putting on that roof and so forth does essentially nothing. And people tend to put themselves in a hazard situation not only by staying longer when they shouldn't be staying and they're told to get out, thinking they're doing the right thing. The other thing is climbing on a roof. Most people are not used to working on that kind of environment. and it's very hazardous. And we've seen many times where people getting up on their roof to try to wet it down have actually slipped, fallen, and now they're injured, and creates and ties up our resources because now we're treating a medical emergency versus doing the firefight. So there's so many things that can go wrong with that scenario. Also, if you have good defensible space will pretty much do well without needing to wet it down. That's why we do defensible space. It gives us an opportunity and a good fighting chance to save your structure. So as far as staying behind, if you're told to evacuate, like I said many times, we do not take that lightly. We take everything in consideration, and if it's time for you to go, there's a reason for you to go. And yes, even when we're stretching resources, if you've done good defensible space, you have good instruction, it's going to give us a fighting chance. And sometimes your structure will even survive even without us being there, and that's the main goal.
And final question, Janice on Facebook says, when will Boulder Creek, or at least the rest of Boulder Creek, be able to go home?
So a lot of Boulder Creek has been repopulated in just the past day, and we were going to continue to look at repopulation today and throughout the weekend. So I would anticipate that Boulder Creek is going to have pretty much most of it repopulated within a day to coming few days. So if you are out, continue to watch the county websites, and they'll advise typically around noon. A press release is put out that advises of the repopulations, and then again a systematic approach that we do. At usually 3 o'clock in the afternoon is typically when we will do a full repopulation in an area that we've identified to repopulate. So be diligent for that and watch for that, and I would think that you're going to see some repopulation of those areas rather quickly and rather soon.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
For more information regarding the local impact of the Bay Area wildfires here in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/2020fires.